Mr. President, Ken Ditkowsky has brought up the fact that I should try to be not salt, but sugar, as it attracts more to it. So let's talk about the problems you got beyond an FBI willing to be part of a murder scheme, a U.S. attorney unwilling to do his job, a GOP U.S. attorney, and the FBI, since it's during your third year, actually your fourth year now, but it was their third year where this happened in office. The FBI is your FBI. It's your, I'm afraid it's your district office agents. They are criminals. They overlooked dozens of crimes. Well, they didn't overlook them. They wouldn't even allow them to be discussed. And I don't know their names. That's a bad sign, Mr. President. Police have to give their names. Your FBI are hiding behind their walls. They're bomb-proof. They have a bomb-proof building, but it's also a cover-up position that is beyond compare. You don't know who they are. It's very hard to get their attention when they don't get criticized by name. These men should be in jail right now. Let's go to what Mr. Ditkowsky wrote to me. One of many things. He's now aware that I am at least going to have something that somebody can see. And let's hope it's the honest media, which we both know, Mr. Ditkowsky and I both know, is very, very minimal. But he says this: we now know that Adam Schiff's whistleblower is a CIA spy that was placed there, and he had carried on through the Obama White House. That should never have happened. The CIA has to be basically ripped apart. You've got to eliminate maybe even some good ones unless they fully pass a lie detector test on misconduct. Why is the focus of the impeachment fiasco diverted and not focusing on the obvious criminal violation of the Constitution by the House? And then we have all the things that occurred up to your election. And yet Twitter was allowed to do their thing. And my congressman at the time, Mr. Rouser was warned, and he dummied up behind his wall. 2 months later, the same person I warned gives me a phone call, and all they have to say is he's aware of your concerns about Twitter. 2 months later, Mr. President, your GOP needs to be replaced. You need to get people who care about America and that aren't politicians. Mr. Ditkowsky says to a lot of people, newspaper people, friends of Mrs. Carlisle that aren't too close a family member, the family thinks that I'm the one that killed her. Of course, I couldn't be, because I'm the one that got taken out by a crowbar and a corrupt police force. The chief of police needs to be arrested. He'll tell you who's doing it, because he's part of them in an indirect way, and that's Chief West, I believe his name is, Mike West. In an indirect way, the Mueller investigation, and in particular Mueller's demeanor during his congressional testimony, revealed that some of the most serious crimes in the history of our republic have to be addressed now. A coup was promulgated. It was, and attempted to be carried out by some of the highest ranking officials, and it's still ongoing. They're now on national TV making fun of your claims that the head of the CIA could do something, or the head of the DNI. Well, those two guys, those two old men, one a former communist, they did it with Obama directing them. Obama was aware of it. And this Russian interference thing is ridiculous. They put advertisements in. Their advertisements were so minimal that you didn't see them even if you were looking for them. Only the random person would see one of these advertisements. They spent under 10 million, under 5 million, probably under 1 million in advertisements. Nobody ever points that out. How much did they spend? I'd like to hear it officially. It certainly wasn't that much. So, let me see if I can get on to the page. And there I go. Mueller should never have been appointed. He's part of the speed up of the sale, the bribed before and after sale of Uranium One. So was Rosenstein. So was Comey. They're all part of Uranium One. Anyone involved in Uranium One, particularly Hillary, who got $145 million for the family slush fund, particularly Hillary, anyone in the Obama administration involved in that should be indicted, if at all possible, and I think it is. So, the impeachment fiasco revealed a most serious violation of the CIA charter. This has to be said over and over again. That you have a whistleblower that's a CIA agent in the White House. He can't be a whistleblower by the CIA charter, particularly since he had no special thing. That man needs to be brought to the front of the room. And yes, he has no right statutorily to confidentiality, and he had no business as a CIA agent. There was lots of people who were not CIA. CIA has a charter to stay out of American politics. He violated it. He should be cashiered as a CIA agent. He should lose his pension unless he has an adequate defense. I don't think he can find one. His whistleblowing had nothing to do with personal knowledge. He should not have been a whistleblower. He was an anti-Trumper, except they don't call him that when they're a Democrat. He was a rabid Democrat. The anti-Trumpers are Republicans. I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican. I'm an angry independent. I did not really desire you to be president. I only wanted all the things you were offering, and I definitely wanted no corrupt lawyer, no lawyer who committed 16 crimes and had enough power within the deep state that she still hasn't been prosecuted, despite the fact that you've been in office 3 years and you're afraid to prosecute the woman. Her name is Hillary Clinton. Prosecute her. Again, I'm here for elder killing to stop, but I want to get your attention. We know you got other problems, but sir, you're an executive, a high-powered executive now. You were one before you got elected. You got to be able to do 10 things at a time, or else the building doesn't get built. So you got to go after the FBI. So they have kept you busy. Well, you've got to go after all the people that have committed crimes, and that includes Comey, Rosenstein, Mueller. Mueller has to be brought before he goes totally senile to answer why all of them agreed to expedite selling to our blood enemies, the Russians, our uranium. We didn't sell someone else's uranium. We approved selling our uranium, and they say you conspired with them. Well, I don't think you did, but if you let them speed up the sale to our blood enemies, and perhaps you will look like you're colluding with the Russians by not stopping. In fact, you ought to reverse the sale. You ought to go to court, get it reversed in the national interest. There's probably 3 or 4 ways you can go about it. It was a fraud on the people by the 9 separate. Some of them didn't know they were doing it. Some of them knew it. Hillary, whoever she assigned to sign off, was a dead ringer for her to do exactly what she would have done, because she needed $145 million, or else how would they live a life of billionaires? So this was in response to my video about the fact that Hillary was guilty as sin from the very start of, before the start. She was prepared to hide her, conceal them, and never show them to state. She had innumerable conversations with her cabal of aides that were involved in selling her access so that various entities, mainly corrupt nations, could get something out of her. All they had to do is contribute to her slush fund. That that has been forgotten or something. I don't know. But Attorney General Barr, we have faith in him. He's a sharp man. But he's got to bring in more Durhams, presuming Durham gets the job done, and more people, because the FBI director has failed. He has kept hold of known crimes and has not pointed them out. He has a duty to do so. He who knows of a felony and fails to report it, he can't just hold it close to the chest and say, well, I knew about it, I just didn't do anything. He has no prosecutorial powers. He has to turn over investigations. He doesn't get to decide which ones he's going to reveal to Attorney General Barr. You need to fire the man, and fire the man on cause, or have him just resign if he wants to go, because he didn't do the crimes, he just covered them up, and that violated in the worst way, because he's a public official, 18 U.S.C. 4 of the duty to not be guilty of misprision of a felony. He had a major problem when he took over the FBI, and his solution was to cover up some more. So I'm asking that Ray be removed, and then somebody investigate the 30 to 45 crimes committed against me and my best friend in order to kill her, including the FBI refusing to do their job. I think this is enough. Mr. Ditkowsky has much more to say about elder cleansing and elder killing. He's actually experienced multiple of these and found out that the FBI in Chicago is the same. They'd rather cover it up or be part of it. We're not sure, really. They are so irresponsible. We think maybe it's just simply that they think that they can do what they want, investigate those murder crimes that they want to investigate, and let the other murders just happen. We hope that's not true, Mr. President. That is not the rule of law. That's not law and order. That's the corruption of Chicago and the national scene put together. Mr. Ditkowsky perhaps is so old, he is 83, I've verified that his voice might shake, but by golly, his pen is just as strong as ever. His words that I will be reading in the next few days to America, Ken Ditkowsky will be heard, and he will be heard without anything but a loud voice. He deserves to be heard loud and clear, and to be followed to the extent that we want to redeem our consciences and our souls for what has been going on for the last 10 to 20 years. Mr. Ditkowsky has faced these people, these lawyers, these judges, these guardians, professional guardians that take away people's money and do it as though it's legal. It's not legal if we knew their true purpose. Their true purpose was to strip the ward clean and then put them away in a public facility under heavy sedation with their corrupt doctor prescribing that as the only thing that would be humane. No, the humane thing would have not to ever have taken them off the street and turned them into a zombie. Mr. Ditkowsky, just as a preview, has a few things to say about the opioid crisis. Part of it has to do with it being used by these killers to zombie out the people that they have stripped clean. Mr. President, this is a national scandal. My friend was just one example. I don't know how I can get to you except to tell you in emotional terms, this is an evil that will be your evil now if you don't do anything, because you're going to have proof that you were told of it. Not that you heard it, but you were told. You are being cut off by people like Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi's a corrupt official who had a corrupt child protective person investigate herself. Pam got that right because the inspector general of her group, rather than investigate, turned it over to Pam Bondi to investigate. And Pam turned it over to the department this woman was doing her evil from. This woman had failed to investigate the 5 witnesses of the complainant and only investigated the 5 witnesses of the abuser. And I'm not going to say alleged abuser. I know the case well. The person molested, abused was my son 20 years ago. And now, a few years back, Pam Bondi did this awful thing, turning it over to the department. She needs to be discredited. She may look pretty, Mr. President, but she is a weasel. You do not turn it over to the department just because it's convenient and it will keep it quiet. Pam Bondi is guilty of corruption by turning it over to the very people that are supposed to be investigated. Yes, I want her to face the music. I want her to explain herself and do it with me in the room and with me having equal rights to indicate what occurred and who she protected. An evil, another pretty woman, Mr. President. Pretty women are actually as evil sometimes as handsome men. So, Mr. Ditkowsky will reign in my discussion, but here, Pam Bondi, you've already got a fox in the henhouse doing whatever she wants to do with absolutely no moral compass. That's an ending. I'll be speaking to you with regularity, daily at least, with a premiere at noon every day. Good night, good morning, good day. How can you have one until you do this part of your job? This is Samuel McAliley. Fight the corrupt, incarcerate the corrupt, ultimately, after you go through the system, because we're talking about ones that should be losing the case. God help us if you don't hear this, because it will go on, and people are dying every day, Mr. President, from elder cleansing. It's across the nation, very well hidden. Nobody knows about my case, and yet I had 30-some-odd felonies committed by the police, the sheriff's office, the hospital, the oncologist. The churches seem to be part of it. The ones I talked to, they stood up for the ones doing the crimes. It's scary when a Presbyterian church and a Mormon church, they can't even think about fighting it because they're part of the medical system doing it. Mr. President, you got scandals, CIA scandals, you got murder scandals and elder killing, you've got Democrats who are abusing the Constitution, and you've got to do them all at once. You're capable of it, we know it. Do it. Get it going. Bring in more people to face the multitude of fronts that are all going on at the same time in our very own country. And yeah, you're doing a good job with the North Koreans and the Chinese, no matter which route you take on each of them, so long as you don't back down like our other presidents did. So, till later, I think I'll have one at noon and at midnight. Premiere. I'll set it for just after noon, just after midnight. This is the new one. Now, I'm not a well man, so all these people can hope that I die or that I am murdered by one of the many people that the murdering son has threatened my life repeatedly, attempting to get his 260 pounds, 250 pounds, 240 pounds, it varies, to be allowed to beat on me. He keeps telling me in front of his mother that we need to go outside and settle it. No, we don't. He needed to treat his mother less abusively, which he could not do, and ultimately he decided he'd kill her. He'd kill her. You are protecting a matricidal monster by not getting people on this job. You got to stop these elder cleansers one at a time. It's going to probably take $1 billion to have your healthcare fraud team actually made to have the power to stop it. They're totally unreachable, I believe, by Mr. Ditkowsky or by myself. Mr. Ditkowsky has had a decade or two failing, mainly failing. He got one lawyer in jail. But this is just background. You'll hear from me with regularity. I think I have to start numbering them. I think you need to have a working Christmas, Mr. President, along with enjoying your family. You need to start getting people with Attorney General Barr and getting rid of Chris Wray. Chris Wray has proven to be a bigger scoundrel than the two that are involved, because he's covering up for the involved ones and he wasn't part of it. So get rid of Chris Wray. Get rid of him quickly. Fire him. I think you have the right, and he's done so little good and a lot bad. He's guilty of misprision of a felony repeatedly. Now I'll say adieu until midnight.